Hello and welcome to our EV meeting. Here you can see who is presenting tonight. It's a very long presentation or meeting, so if you don't want to watch the whole thing or listen to it, just pick out what you want to look and listen to.
And again, we want to thank all of you. We've thanked the Nissan Technical Center through Robert and Owen for hosting us here as they have done frequently in the past. Can we give Robert and Nissan?
Anybody else first timer? No? Bathrooms are here, bills for the food and stuff like that, and the garage is open out here. If there's any problem, the exit, because this is the exit for sure. If that's blocked, the exit's in the back. Meeting area is in this corner of the building over here, please. That's in case.
What about charging if somebody needs charging?
Anybody needs charging, we have chargers in the back, chargers galore. So
One of the nicest, we like him, but what really draws us to this setting
It's a free charging.
free charge.
Does anybody need to have that during the meeting, to charge during the
Yeah,
meeting?
really, if anybody wants to plug in, I can set you up. Yeah, bring them in the back and then we'll
So that was a good segue to this little upgraded news.
you have the adapter?
I got an adapter.
In the news highlights of the past week, Walmart and Target have both announced that they will be installing Target in something like 100 of their stores, Walmart 600, a range of chargers, not just level 2s, but all the way up to the fastest DC high-tech fast chargers at 350 kilowatts in the next year. So that is an incredible plus for everybody other than Tesla. It's really good to see. And Tesla 3 production ramp, you've told me it's modest at this point, so thank you.
Well, you Tesla drivers don't go to Target anyways, right?
Yeah, we do.
I mean,
Target's,
That's all we can afford to buy
that's right,
afterwards.
that's why we can afford a Tesla, because we don't have anything else.
Was there a comment back there?
Just, how high a DC charge rate can cars stand?
Well, the new European cars are actually, the Mission E will handle up to that 350.
Whoa.
So they're talking about an 80% charge in 8 minutes,
wow.
which makes a road trip in a Mission E pretty interesting.
Yeah, but how many of those chargers are they going to have?
They're going to go in, they're going to be required at every Porsche dealer.
Yeah, every Porsche dealer.
Well, you know, if you got a 400-mile range, it's not as big a problem.
Mark.
As part of the Volkswagen settlement, Electrify America will be installing 50 stations statewide along highway corridors. Each of those 50 stations is supposed to have 5 chargers, 2 to 3 of which will be 150 kilowatt, and the other 2 to 3 will be 350 kilowatt.
Oh, wow.
And Mark is speaking with knowledge as a Air Resources Board.
Control board.
And if that weren't
Yeah,
enough,
member.
the CEC is going to wrap up some of their programs for deploying fast chargers along the corridors as well this year. Most of it will be done this year. So up and down 5, 99, 80, and 50. They'll be putting in.
Okay, guy,
chargers.
enough. We're 5 minutes behind. Okay.
I'd like to just thank you, George, for letting me talk about this for about 5 minutes. Probably the racers in the crowd already know about what's called the refuel races at Laguna Seca down in Monterey. But I'm sort of addressing this to the other people in the crowd that maybe haven't tried racing and would like to give it a shot. As you can see, it's on July 1st. I typically go down the day before. This time will be on June 30th on a Saturday. And it's just a blast. You can bring anything, any EV, plug-in EV. And the problem is I used to live in the East Bay, so getting to Monterey wasn't a big deal. So from here, we're talking about like 180 miles or so just to get there. So that's going to put a lot of people off. But I thought I'd sort of at least throw it out to the Sacramento area, see if people are interested, maybe having a group to go down there, and we can kind of talk and figure out what's the best way of getting down there. For you guys with your Teslas and your Bolts, you'll probably make it all the way. But I would recommend that you might want to stop in Gilroy, where they have the superchargers, anyway, just to top up again.
There's a supercharger in Monterey too now.
Oh, okay. Well, that's kind of overshooting where the track is, but that's a good thing to know. That's great. For people like me who have the smaller cars, I need to figure out how I'm going to get there, frankly, because I figure it'll take probably 6 stops. I have a...
Or you could ride a Tesla.
Or I could buy a Tesla, yeah. I could,
Need the
but
contact point if we're interested in going to get a group together?
yes, I'm starting an email list, so please give me your email address if you have any interest at all, if you want to do that. So
Extension cord?
So we have some
So,
pictures here of some of the cars that
let me-
collected there last year.
yeah, let me the point I'm trying to make here is that for smaller cars, you really do need to figure out how to get there. You can spend a whole day and make maybe a bunch of stops, or you can do what I think I'm going to do is rent a truck and a dolly and just get down there. You know, it's a little more expensive that way. The power is provided by the track. As you can see here, we have a line of basically 1450 outlets, but you do have to bring your own level 2 charger because you're going to want to charge between sessions. You have basically 4 sessions during the day. For people who maybe haven't raced before, you can go as slow as you want. They try and line you up with other drivers that have sort of the same level of experience. So you're not really racing wheel to wheel. It's not a really, it's not a situation like
Mark?
I would just mention that for those of you whose wives, in my case, or husbands won't let you race on the track, they do have a parade lap, and you can participate in the parade lap.
that. Yeah, I don't know if I would go 180 miles for a parade lap, I'll tell you, man. I want to push that throttle down a little bit. Yeah, go ahead.
Nissan had a program with the Japanese government to put up chargers all the way down to Monterey, so you should check it.
To drive the ARC?
Drive the ARC.
Yeah,
So you
there
have-
there already are chargers all the way down.
Yeah,
I've done
so
it
you don't
before,
have to
so
stop 6
it's
times.
well. I have this motto: it's charge when you can, not when you must. You know, so that's why I stop off.
So here's again some track shots.
Can you
of-
back up just real quick, George? I
I
just
don't know that I can back up. So you gotta
Okay.
move forward because we
All
have
right.
5 minutes.
Okay, this is my car. This is a Tesla on the famous corkscrew, which maybe you've heard about. It's a blast. It's so much fun. And I'll tell you what, I'll take on any 5,000 car-pound on that corkscrew. I really will. It's a test of your car and the driver. So, and you learn and you have a lot of
Is
fun.
that a
you know.
plus or
What's a plus?
the racing suspension?
I don't know what you're talking. I'm not sure what he's talking about. Are you talking about me?
No, on the Tesla.
I haven't a clue, man. I don't know. So, but anyway, you have this is fairly short course, lots of twists. The top speed doesn't matter too much. It's more your ability on turns, you know, and you're willing to, get on the turns. Go ahead. This is my favorite car. This is a custom-made car that's made in a Cobra body. I always like to see this guy when I go down there. It's a fantastic car. And I'm just going to leave it. You can find me later and
And the
ask
rest
questions
is
if you have
It's a
it.
beautiful area to visit, so, it's an argument for a great weekend.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah. Oh, you didn't have the charges, the cost.
No, you had that, summarize that real briefly, because that was intimidating.
Okay. Yeah. If
You had a worst case scenario.
Yeah, if you want to do what I might do is go down, just take a whole day to go down in advance. Then the registration fees are like $119. If you want to possibly rent a pickup and a dolly, you're probably going to spend over $300 on that. So that kind of gives you a range of
What's the dolly by itself if you hooked it on the back of a Model X?
It's probably only $70, I think, for 2 days. So do you want to tow my car down?
You can tell me.
Anyway, like I say, I'd like to get your names on the list if you want more information about this. My name is Knud Kirkegaard. I'm driving a Tesla Model S 2016. I didn't know about SacEV until I ran into a guy at the Folsom Outlet Malls one day, and he gave me a business card, and that's why I'm here today. I talked to George about speaking about electric airplanes, because that's probably where my passion is more than in cars. I put solar on my house. I live in Cameron Park, which is PG&E district, so I'm still ahead with a car and electric house, so now I figured I'd add an airplane to make it add it up. So I still got to use up that electricity. So
Just tell me when to switch.
yes, just a little background. I'm a retired engineer from Intel, did software engineering there, and since then I'm kind of working on my pilot career. I have a commercial and instrument rating, and now working on my instructor rating. So please, go ahead. Next one, please. Oh, this one was the PDF. Sorry, I confused you by sending you that one. So
Okay.
you can just go page down, I think, if you. Then we can. There we go. So sorry, 10 minutes is what George said, Max. I started with electric airplanes back in third or fourth grade. I had 2 house fans. I put them on the wing on something, but I forgot about I need extension cords. So that was the end of that. Maybe the control line airplanes, but that didn't quite work out. So I dropped that and went on to flying more conventional airplane and gliders. So the domains we're talking about that are currently like cars going through a transition to electric is everything from sailplanes. They've actually done it for quite a while, using it to launch the aircraft or to boost their range if they run out of thermals or lift activity somewhere. And of course, you all heard about the unmanned aircraft systems. They are popping up everywhere, and they're beginning now to allow them in controlled airspace, which worries me a little bit because I got to be up there myself. They don't put people in theirs. I'm up there myself. What's going to happen there, I don't know, but the FAA tries to control that. We have all the new area of vertical takeoff and landings and electric of these. There's a whole new field coming about autonomous aircraft. We can talk about that a little bit more. My primary interest is general aviation. That's the field I've been in. I started to fly when I was 15 years old, and really enjoy being up there flying, and we'll talk more about that. Commercial aviation is beginning to catch up. Both Airbus and Boeing are doing some experimentation in this area. And then you have, quote, the perpetual flight, the solar impulse, which flew around the world, charging during the day, so you had battery power at night to fly, and that way they made it all the way around the world. Not in one stop, but flew quite a while and did the 40,000 miles just on solar power, so very impressive. What you see here is kind of an overview of what we have today. In the upper left-hand corner is kind of the field that I operate in with the gliders and more conventional-looking aircraft that are beginning to get coming out with electric motors on them. In the upper right-hand corner there, you have the vertical takeoff and landing. The one in the upper right-hand corner, the volocopter, is one that's developed in Germany, and actually that Intel now is behind and developing. China, EHang just has done some test flying too. So a lot of the planes you see here are actually flying today, either as part of test flying. I don't think they're necessarily commercially available except for the Pipistrel aircraft. I'll talk more about that. The airliners and is in the very early stages. They're initially talking about probably hybrid aircraft where you may use electric motors for takeoff and the initial climb away from populated areas and then switch to turbofans or something like that. And you have the solar impulse, and you have the drones, of course. So it seems like similar to cars, we're kind of on the cusp of some big changes in aviation too here. Little background how I got involved too. If you look at Boeing's pilot outlook, they expect that we're going to need about 637,000 pilots over the next 20 years. Commercial pilots today, airline pilots today worldwide is probably more around 150,000, so you can see how we're going to train all these pilots. And people still like to fly airlines that have pilots in them. I don't think they want the commercial airlines to be autonomous just yet, but they may go to that. And we have a lot of pilots that are approaching retirement age, and we need to train new pilots. So next one, please. So
what happened is we have an existing fleet of aircraft. The Cessnas have been around forever, and it's a great airplane, but they are getting old, and they're getting very expensive to operate. And they typically use 100 low-lead aviation fuel, which eventually will be made illegal. We don't know when it's going to happen, but there's a lot of engines out there that may have trouble once they have to switch something else. They're coming out with a few diesel engines that's jet fuel, but not a lot of those around yet. The operating cost is very high. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And for this reason, a lot of pilots drop out of training because it gets too expensive and they can't really stay enthusiastic about it. To get a license, you need at least, today, probably 60 to 80 hours of flight training, and the instructor himself says $50 to $100. The plane is probably $100 to $200, right? So you can imagine how expensive it is to get a pilot license, just a private pilot. Staying locally, just to finish it off, we have the Sustainable Aviation Project down in Fresno, which is really exciting. A guy named Joseph Oldham, who is the director of CalSTART down there that kind of does electric initiatives with the private sector and put electric buses in Fresno. He started a project with a grant of buying 4 electric training aircraft, and they are now just here last month. They were inaugurated down in Fresno, and they initiated the infrastructure with chargers at 3 local airports, so that you can do the cross-country training as well, and now they're beginning to train the instructors for this.
This is just in the last 2 weeks.
Yes, exactly. So I'm going to fly down there and try it out, so I can't wait to try one of these electric airplanes. Next one, please. That's my more personal involvement. Today I fly a Cessna 172 1979. It burns 13 gallons an hour. So that's in fuel cost alone. Operating is about $60 an hour with the prices at Cameron Park, which are some of the lowest in the areas. If you go into a big airport, they charge $5 to $6 a gallon for fuel of these. I love that airplane, but to stay with the future, I put down a deposit. So I got a slot in the line of the production of Sunflyer. It's a plane that's being developed in Colorado. And it's going to be fully type certified. The ones we saw before in Fresno are light sport aircraft, so they have restrictions. This is going to be a fully type certified instrument flying, and you can charge for it. They can do all the commercial things that you can do with other type certified aircraft. It's going to come out initially with an 8 kilowatt engine, 107, and it's a 2-seater trainer. And they expect the operating cost to be about $3 an hour compared to just the $60 an hour for fuel in the 182 right now. So we're hoping they're talking about 10 to 20 times lower operating cost an hour once we switch to the electric aircraft here. So
Are they more reliable than
that we don't know yet. They just started test flying. The first test flight of this plane actually happened last month too. So this is all new information and I don't expect to see this plane here in California until 2 to 3 years from now. So.
And it's variable prop and everything that
Yes, so the good part about this too is it has variable prop, and you can, well actually, sorry, I may be wrong there, but it has the regenerative braking too. So you can, when you descend and stuff, you actually add to your batteries or to the, supposedly that's quite when you have a plane that kind of brakes really hard in the air there when you switch that on, so. It's ideal. The Germans, Siemens, have done a lot of experiments with towing gliders and skydivers because it's ideal for that. You have this engine that can climb really fast, and when you go down to pick up the next glider or skydivers, you can charge the battery again, so it's a perfect utility for that as well. So that's where my personal involvement come in. If you get the copy of these slides, here are the links you can try. I've tried to go to some of the new conferences that happens, CAFE, for all of the flight efficiency aircraft. Sustainable Aviation is one, Skies is a nice magazine about it, but you can look at this, so I'm open to questions. If
All of
there's
the
no
slides and
time.
stuff will be up on the website as well.
So, thank you. Yeah.
So, if you had to charge that plane, how long would it take to charge?
I don't know for sure right now because we don't know what the infrastructure is going to be exactly. Oh, sorry. Down in Fresno, they put up chargers. I know that GAMA, which is the General Aviation Manufacturing Association, are working on a standard across electric aircraft. What that's going to be, I don't know. And if it's going to be the same as for cars, which I kind of hope it'll be. But
Do you know what size battery was in it?
I think this one, oh gee, good question. they're very stingy on the details yet because it's kind of early in the stage. So it's an 8 kilowatt engine, 107. So I don't know, maybe it has 30 kilowatt hour or something like that. Yeah. It has a 3.5 hour range. A typical flight instruction lesson is about an hour and a half, and EFA requires you have half an hour reserve, right? So that's thank you. I can keep you updated as we go forward.
Adeel Ahmad from the Energy Commission is going to be talking about the wonderful changes for DC fast charging corridors.
Yeah, hi, like George said, my name is Adeel Ahmad. I'm with the California Energy Commission. I'm in the Zero Emissions Vehicle Infrastructure Office under the Fuels and Transportation Division. So if you want to go ahead and take the next slide. So basically, I'm going to talk about the corridor charging solicitations we put out recently in the past 2-3 years. These sites that were basic requirements that the sites have to be 24/7 availability to the public. Since these are public chargers, they have to be within the corridor range of 3 miles, as well as 10 miles from existing DC fast chargers. We didn't want to do a cluster of chargers in one area. We wanted to spread it out. We do have ADA requirements for a charger on site. It's not that the DC fast charger is necessarily ADA required. It is a level 2 charger, but as long as it is ADA required to have a charger at that site. We did take into account that the charging would be for smaller vehicles that came out early in the market with smaller ranges, not the Tesla folks, or not the people who have like the e-Golf or things like that have about an 80-mile range. So we tried to make it accommodate those vehicles that they could go from north to south in California and east and west as well to travel. Each site must support these standards, CHAdeMO, SAE, CCS, as well as a level 2 J1772. There is one port per charger that can actively charge. It's not that there's a CCS and a CHAdeMO. You can do both at the same time. It is going to be one active charger, and that's typically on the manufacturer side of the dilemma for that one. And then the equipment must be UL certified. Moving forward, we're actually adding to that for California energy savings, the Energy Star certification as well. So that's moving on forward. This isn't for these solicitations that recently went out. And then these chargers need to have maintenance plans. There was a point of contention for a few of the proposals about the maintenance plans, but we did make that a requirement that they have to at least have 3 to 4 plus years of actual active service. So these stations have proper uptime, not that they go down and then that they are networked, because that worst part for EV drivers to come up to the station and it's not working. And on top of that, we also do require that they are networked. Network chargers, so you can see through an app or something like that. If it is a charge point or a cargo or plug share, you can see an app and see if a station is available. At least you can plan for it and try to. Some of the applications are also trying to do reservations and things like that for added value. And then also the highway signage, so in case you don't have a phone or anything like that, they do that. So the solicitations came across 2 different solicitations. We had GFO 15601 and then 603 to support the north, south, and east, west. Almost about $23 million of money put out there. That was a little bit more than what we originally planned, but we had some more funding, so we ended up putting in some more money. The blue dots, I don't know if it's a little small picture here, but the blue dots are the planned sites that are going to go in. Basically, we are covering I-5, 101, 99, and then the other interregional corridors as well, like 505, 580, and then Route 41, things like that in the southern area, Fresno area. And then there's going to be 191 DC fast chargers going in. These are chargers; these aren't ports. So I know there's a distinction between that, chargers and ports. These are chargers, so the port count might be a little different. And then level 2 chargers, either single or dual, depending on the site host or the proposal recipient who put in the chargers. It could be a dual port, but these are just actual EVSEs, not the port count. So for 15601, this is the I-5 corridor. We split it up into about 5 sections for the proposal. So from Red Bluff or Oregon to Red Bluff, Oregon border, that is, we have 8 sites, and they're expected to go in by 2018. That portion is handled by ChargePoint. And then from Red Bluff to Sacramento, we have about 5 sites expected to go in, and those are going to be expected by Q1 of 2019. Those are EVgo that are managing those sites and installing them. And then from Sacramento to Lebec, we got ChargePoint again with 4 sites expected in 2018 to be up and running. And then Lebec to Santa Clarita, charge point with 4 sites. And then San Clemente, we have EV Connect. They seem to have gotten that one right in our proposals or in our solicitation with their proposal, they had it in the right spot, because we don't necessarily go out and say a charger needs to go here, here, here. They have to provide us a proposal, and luckily they picked a good spot in their proposal.
Are any of the chargers going to be at rest stops?
So that is a Caltrans project that we have worked with Caltrans a little bit. That's their 30 for 30 program to do at rest stops. We don't really, that's Caltrans property and things like that. So we can't just go in there and put in chargers. They have to put it in themselves, because there's also other rules about, providing fueling at a Caltrans facility and things like that. So Caltrans is handling that with their 30 for 30 project.
One of the issues, sorry to interject, but Let's Try America ran across this problem, and that is that the rest stops are typically federally owned, and so charging providers can have to charge a fee on these federally owned rest stops.
Which is a good thing.
So that means that if they want to be sustainable, they're not going to put EVSEs in. I mean, the CEC is, but Volkswagen isn't. So that is.
Kills the business model. Okay, moving on.
Yeah, so then for under the same solicitation for the 99 corridor, which runs parallel, we got Red Bluff to Sacramento again with EVgo with 1 site. And then we got Sacramento to Fresno EV Connect, 5 sites. And then Fresno to Bakersfield EV Connect with 5 sites. And then San Jose to Bulletin Recargo is with 8 sites. So Recargo is a little special in this one, but I'll come into that one a little later.
Before we leave I-5 completely, are we finally going to get one at Kettleman City or Harris Ranch, so that we can go down I-5? You can't go down, unless you have a Tesla, you can't go down I-5 now.
I'm not. There's going to be in the Kalinga area, but I don't think it's going to be particularly in Harris Ranch itself. But so this is for GFO 15603. ChargePoint came in strong on this one, I will say. They had a pretty good set of proposals for this one. So they pretty much swept a corridor in this. So a lot of these are ChargePoint installations. But this is where I was saying we came up with a little bit more money and added to this solicitation to get in some more DC fast charging for public access. There's going to be 5 sites on I-15 with 12 DC fast chargers. And then I-10 will see 4 sites with 10 DC fast chargers. They pretty much doubled up on their fast chargers for this solicitation. And then State Route 14, we have 3 sites. This does not include Mojave because this one's included in another route, which State Route 58, which is 4 sites, 8 DC fast chargers. And these sites are going to be all 50 kilowatt. There is a potential for a higher power output on these sites, but for right now, they are going to be at 50 kilowatts.
So to travel north to south, do you need a wallet full of charge point cards or likeness thereof?
So in our solicitation, we required that they have, you can have the charge point card or, an EVgo or Recargo program or something like that, or the plan that they have for their charging, or you can call in to make a charge. There's not really a point of sales terminal there on all these chargers because the manufacturer seems that it's a little bit more cumbersome to have that, but you can call in to activate a charge and start charging. So you're not tied. Yeah, so you're not really you don't have to be tied to the network necessarily, but you do pay a higher fee, I guess, is in their business model.
Can I add something?
Yeah.
California passed a law called the Open Access Act, and it's going to require all providers to make their charging equipment open to credit cards across their entire networks, so that a single credit card or single form of payment can be used through any of these networks.
Yeah, so there's a little bit of other work we're doing with that with NREL as well to see if we can get the back office to handling payments and things like that as well, because it's not necessarily the point of sales terminal isn't really necessarily on that site. You have to call it in, and you can still use a credit card, I believe, when you call in.
You already see that with Greenlaw, for example. As one example, I saw one down in LA recently too. That's what we should support, because that will really help to make it that simple.
I mean, the legislation was passed. Our agency is currently developing a regulation that will require it. Yeah, that's a very good idea. Well, the regulation, I'm sorry to take time, but the regulation probably won't be passed by our board until late this year or early next
And most, only about, if you looked at the dates, only about half of those chargers would be operational this year. So the other half are coming in first quarter 19. So
yeah, everything's
this is a work
expected.
in progress.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, sport green lots, stay out.
Yeah. Okay, moving on.
A lot of players in this field. So this is where I was talking about we put in additional money to get in more sites in. We have EV Connect for in the 603 solicitation. These are the second place corridors. This is basically to fill in the gaps that we believe that should be filled in from the previous proposals that maybe were a little bit less in this area. So they're putting about 4 sites on I-10 and then 4 sites on State Route 14 and State Route 12. They're going to get 3 sites with DC fast chargers. And this is, again, about the 50 kilowatt charging range. So then we also funded Recargo. They are expected to be operational by 2019, I'm going to say at the latest, or at the earliest 2019, because they're a little bit ambitious and they're putting chargers that are capable of 350 kilowatts, not necessarily putting out 350 kilowatts. Like somebody alluded to earlier, like not all vehicles can charge at 350 kilowatts except for the Mission E. But that's something that they are capable of doing, and they can be upgraded to support that power output. So that's the high DC fast charge bullet right there. And this is on US 101, 11 sites, and then 15 DC fast chargers across those 11 sites, and then State Route 152, 3 sites with 4 DC fast chargers. And this will also have level 2 chargers as well.
You mentioned the charge rate for the Recargo chargers. Is there a minimum charge rate for the others?
So the minimum across the solicitations is 50 kilowatts. So this is kind of, they're trying to go above and beyond and try to push the market, and so this is why they are pretty much going to be at the end of 2019 is what their expected time to be commissioned at these sites, is because they're having a little bit more effort to get those 350 kilowatt chargers out there.
Anybody besides Kirkegaard doing the more than 50 kilowatts?
So there is potential for ChargePoint to put out some higher output sites, but right now they are still proceeding with 50 kilowatt chargers. We do not know if they're going to be putting out their higher chargers yet. It's something that they're going to...
Are they putting the infrastructure at least to be able to handle higher power chargers? Or?
So in our solicitations, we required a stub out that can support up to 150 kilowatt chargers. Okay, so those stub outs are out there, and those are installed during the site installation. So in case they can put in higher power chargers later, those
transformers and everything.
Yeah, so it's good. They have to do the upgrades and things like that. So we at the Energy Commission, we support those utility upgrades and things like that.
That's good.
All right, so for lessons learned here, site negotiations. Apparently, we did not expect this one coming, but it is pretty cutthroat now. People are coming in and trying to take out sites from one another to put in their charging stations. I guess it's a business tactic now. You come in, give them a little bit more money, and so this in our process it adds a little bit more time to get a site commissioned, because if they lose a site host, they have to go find another site that fits the requirements of the solicitation without changing their proposal too much, and that requires an amendment. And working with Energy Commission, we have a formal amendment if you change a site host and things like that, so it becomes a little bit cumbersome. And we also have the proposals come in with utility support and site host support, so that legwork is completed before we get into it, and getting the utility involved early on really helps out a lot, especially like you were saying earlier with the transformer upgrades and things like that. That can add a pretty penny to the project, and it can add a significant amount of delays, especially with the trenching, because trenching is quite a bit of a cost too on top of the transformers and things like that. This is like what Recargo and ChargePoint are coming in with the newer technology. We don't want to hinder the progress of these sites either at the same time by putting in really high power chargers, because it is like a chicken and egg problem here. Like the vehicles can't really use the 350 kilowatt chargers, and if we want to put it out there, then it slows down the process. So we are making sure that they're 50 kilowatts or higher, and if somebody else comes in with a 350 kilowatt charger or even in between, we will support that. We will let them make those changes as long as those costs are absorbed by the recipient. And then future-proofing, like I was saying earlier, was for the 150 kilowatt stub outs, as well as allowing people to use higher power chargers. In case you guys get the slide deck, here's some additional resources. Our great acronym, as everybody likes, ARVTP. It's not really rolls off the tongue, but yeah, that's us, Alternative and Renewable Fuels and Vehicle Technology Program. We are part of the Fuels and Transportation Division, like I was saying earlier, and then the big daddy of all, the California Energy Commission, for me at least. So Just to give a little plug for our future funding opportunities, we just launched the Cali VIP program. It actually went live this month. This is to actually get out infrastructure out faster, deploy it faster without the solicitation process. This is a incentive program. Basically, we'll update the site with projects that are of interest, and you guys can definitely go check it out and things like that, and see if you guys want to. I mean, on a site host level, the thing is, we just released a Fresno project with this one. So that one is in the Fresno area, but we are looking to expand to different areas and things like that. It is targeted solicitation still, or I shouldn't say solicitation, but it's targeted projects. But it is to get the money out faster. You put in the infrastructure and you do get a rebate at the end of that. And this way it doesn't bog down the system of getting the infrastructure out. And basically my name is Adeel Ahmad, and my colleague is Brian Fauble. I guess there's a space between app, take the space out. But yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to ask me, and then.
Are the site hosts expected to contribute to the charger?
So in the proposals, the site host can contribute to the project in either the space allocation or just saying, hey, we're willing to give our space to this project. They don't necessarily have to contribute to the EVSC, if is that what you mean?
Well, the reason I'm asking, I've had some feedback from some of the cities along I-5. The charger companies are going to them and say, throw in $10,000 and you'll get a charging spot. You'll get the charger. So what's the legality of that?
So that is an agreement between the service provider and the site host. That's not money we see, or that's not money that the Energy Commission looks. They can, if in their proposal, they can put the cost of we don't pay for property or building structures itself, so that cost can't come into our solicitations or projects. But they can match fund that parking spot or something like that, because the cost of maintaining a parking spot has an X amount of cost per year. So they can add that as a match share, but they can't add the cost of actually acquiring a site if they have an agreement with a company.
One more question.
Do site proposers include stationary battery storage to manage demand charges to the utility?
So in one of our scoring criteria, we do have a innovative portion of it where we do look at storage, production, V2G, or those kind of capabilities. This is more right now. We're more focused on getting that infrastructure out, but we do give a little bit of points for that. Thinking outside of the box. It's just the cost of battery technology and things like that is pretty high to have that kind of high energy storage density in a single site, and space is also very limited. If we go to like a more open structure or plaza areas or things like that, that definitely would be a higher input in the solicitation.
Are they all getting demand charges for these sites, for the quick charge?
Yeah, so from our experience, it depends on how the utility structures for pricing and the tariffs are for that site host. It depends. A lot of the proposals have the EVSP negotiate with the site host what they want to charge for the charging. So it's really up to the site host how much they charge for the charging, things like that, depending on who owns it.
I'm looking at the infrastructure, the utility. Typically, if you're putting in three-phase, they have a demand charge that's pretty expensive.
Yeah, so that problem comes up a lot. We haven't found a solution around that or anything like that. It's something that the site host does absorb, or the EVSP if they still own the site.
Okay, we need to move on. So round of applause.
Thank you.
And for how many of you came on board with this technology in 2011? So for those of us that came on in 2011, when there were about 5 chargers maybe in the greater Sacramento area, this is just like music and amazing to hear. And we're not there yet, but we gotta thank ourselves and give everybody a pat on the back, particularly our Mark over there from CARB, who has been the force in making California what it is in terms of a receptive climate for this new technology. So again, thank you, Adeel, and thank CARB, because we wouldn't be here without it.
Hi, my name is Raef Porter. I'm the Climate and Energy Manager for the Sacramento Area Council of Governments. I'm a former ICE driver. I now drive a 2016 Kia Soul EV. So thanks to Guy for pushing me in that direction. Just a little background on SACOG. SACOG is the regional transportation planning agency, and we fund transportation projects, anything from transit to roads to bridges, and everything in between. And probably about 10 years ago, we started to look at electric vehicles and how can we provide infrastructure for those. So we created a regional EV infrastructure plan through the Energy Commission grant we received from the Energy Commission. We went through a pretty long process. A lot of you were involved in that. And then we started to work on installations. And we worked with SMUD and, again, with Energy Commission and a few others to actually start to install chargers. If you've been to the Co-op or the Nugget, those were all funded by SACOG dollars. A couple of years ago, we decided we were kind of following what was happening with the city of Sacramento and the Volkswagen settlement, and we thought, well, you know, if the city of Sacramento gets this, and they did, we really need to start to look at what is going to happen in the rest of our region. So SACOG is 6 counties. We're Sacramento, Placer, El Dorado, Yolo, Sutter, and Yuba County. So we do all the transportation planning and funding for those counties. And we said, well, we're going to really need to start to push things in a different direction if the Volkswagen settlement lands in Sacramento, and it did. So we created a program called Green Region, and our board just adopted this last month. There's 5 elements, as you see in this. There's looking at personal vehicles, sharing, car rental, if you think of like Uber and Lyft, and also if you go to the airport, how fantastic would it be to go to the airport and not get upsold to a large SUV, which happens all the time, but what if they say, oh, well, let's put you in an EV and we'll actually discount that for you a little bit. That would be a fantastic gateway for people's visit to Sacramento, and you know, Sacramento is becoming more and more of a destination. We work with a lot of transit providers, both big, you know, RT and Yolo County transit providers and other express buses, but also a lot of them are moving to this more small micro-transit. So how can we look at both the big and the small type of transit fleets? So we work with the air districts as well as the Sacramento Clean Cities to look at medium and heavy-duty vehicles, and how can we provide electrification for that? And then lastly, disadvantaged communities. This is just, you know, areas that have traditionally been underserved by infrastructure, period, especially electrification. And this could be in the forms of education, but as well as infrastructure itself. So George, next slide. I think you might need to advance a couple. I think there's a couple hidden things. Oh, no, I guess for some reason, if you go back, if you can. Oh, okay. Well, that was a fantastic slide that showed you what the progression of EV sales in our region was. We, based on the DMV data that we have, we estimate that there's about 14,000, yeah, if you just loop all the way through, it'll get back there. We estimate that there's about 14,000 EVs in the 6-county region right now. And given the Volkswagen settlement and a bunch of other things that are happening, as well as the governor's executive order to have 5 million on the roads by 2030, we're expecting that number to grow quite a bit. And in order for that to happen, we're really going to need to put a lot of infrastructure on the ground.
Do you have a number for how many you expect that to go to?
The slide had it. I don't remember. The slide will be on the. Apparently, George is going to put them on the deck, so it'll be on there. We're expecting, and our dollars have, it's federal and state. So if you can imagine strings attached to dollars, there's probably going to be 1,000 strings attached to every dollar that we have going out there, but we're going to make it work. But with that, all the charging infrastructure that we put in the ground has to be publicly available. So we're estimating that by I believe it's 2025 that we're going to need about 300 publicly available DC fast chargers in the region. So that's what that slide was showing, is that we're really going to have to focus on charging, and our job, we think, is going to really try to build up that DC fast charging. I think it's in the ballpark of 300 is what I had on the slide. It's probably going to be more, but that's a good ballpark. And actually, just today, there was a study that came out about the charging that is going to be needed in the region, and actually surpassed that. So we're probably going to have to look at our numbers again. So that's on the public side. So it's really just trying to get charging out there. There's a lot of great studies. It's kind of, if you build it, they will come. It seems to be holding true that if you put the infrastructure out there, it's a signal to people that, oh, okay, I can actually use this car, and I'm going to be able to get around. The second area that we want to focus on, as I mentioned, was car shares, car rentals and TNCs. That's just a fancy word for saying things like Uber and Lyft. There's actually a bill working its way through the Senate right now that's going to require these TNCs to move to electrification. I think as it stands right now, it's 20% by 2020. All vehicles need to be electric or zero emission. And then it's 50% by 2023. So that's a pretty fast ramp up. And there's been a lot of pushback from Uber and Lyft, surprise, on that. But we think that that's really an important thing. So we don't necessarily want to incentivize these private companies to come in, but we want to try to find ways that we can work with them to really get that. And if we can showcase Sacramento as a region that's really going to be on the forefront of that, we'll do that. The slide that's up on the screen right now is an example of an EV car share in Indianapolis, and they're actually putting this exact same company down in LA relatively soon. It's called Blvd. It's actually a French manufacturer, and they have a 200 vehicle EV car share rollout in Indianapolis. It's been hugely successful. We're going to have one, obviously, in the city of Sacramento again through the Volkswagen settlement. They're doing a point-to-point as well as just kind of an open share, and those companies are yet to be determined. Fully electric, yep. So again, we don't want to reinvent what any of these programs are going to be. These wheels have been out there for a long time. We just want to, help these companies or help the public agencies that are already moving in this direction try to fund the vehicles and the infrastructure as well. So next slide. So transit, as I mentioned, we're working with a lot of our transit providers. The Air Resources Board has a mandate on transit providers that all transit vehicles need to be zero emission by 2040. And if you have a fleet of more than 100 transit vehicles, you need to start doing that by 2020. All of your purchases by 2020 need to be zero emission. Buses range from $600 to $1 million a piece. So if you've got a fleet of 1,000 vehicles, or 100 vehicles, you can see that's going to be quite a bit of money. Now, ARB and others have actually started to create some fairly large incentives to reduce that cost, but it's still going to be a pretty hefty lift. And as you can see in our region, and I think this number might even be a little bit low, we probably have in the ballpark of 800 fleets. And as transit changes, as I mentioned, a lot of transit providers are moving away from these giant buses that go on fixed routes, and they're moving to the smaller buses, and so their fleet's going to grow. And so that number is probably going to go up. Those smaller vehicles might be a little bit cheaper, but there's actually not a lot of them even out on the market right now. The big buses there are, but the smaller buses, there's actually nothing out on the market right now. Aside from the public fleets, we also have, again, a lot of private fleets. You see Uber and Lyft up here again, but they also are moving, their model is also moving away from just one person that's going to drive you around with just one person in the car. They're moving to these other things, Uber Pool and Lyft Line. The city of West-Sacramento, where you're at right now, is working with a company called VIA that's doing this, and RT over across the river is doing it as well. It's called microtransit. So it's this, instead of a fixed route service like your normal bus would be, it's on demand. So you're going to get your phone out, you're going to call, they're going to send something, but there's going to be other people in the car when you get there, and they're going to have their algorithms going to give them a route. These providers are going to be on that same mandate that they need to start moving to zero emission vehicles. Again, we're not going to give them a bunch of money because they're private businesses, but how can we work with them? How can we incentivize them? And how, again, can we make Sacramento a showcase for all of these great things? So next slide. Fleets as well. As I mentioned, we're already working with the Sacramento Clean Cities and a lot of the air districts. We have an existing program called CCAT, which is basically just taking big, dirty engines out of these vehicles and providing them an incentive to move to something a lot cleaner. We want to actually increase that a little bit more and not just get them out of diesel into something a little bit cleaner, but let's move them to electrification as well. We think that there's a lot of opportunities with this. SACOG already does a lot of joint purchases with a lot of our jurisdictions. We have a lot of things around fuel, like if they wanted to buy renewable diesel, we have a renewable diesel purchase program. that they can work with us on and reduce their costs quite a bit. We think we can do something very similar on the electrification side on finding chargers as well as vehicles for a lot of our public agencies around the region. And we also want to work with Clean Cities on the private side. So CCAP also provides that incentive for private fleets. This, I should say, is for medium and heavy duty mostly. We are going to work with the Air District on how can we provide that on light duty, even though there's a lot of existing programs out there. We just think it's a great direction to move. So next slide, George. And then, as I mentioned, disadvantaged communities. We're going to be a little bit more flexible, no offense to my state partners in the room here. Disadvantaged communities is an actual thing in the state definitions. It has to deal with income and exposure to different things. We want to be a little bit more flexible on what that definition of disadvantaged communities is. So we're going to work with a lot of our cities and counties and our elected officials on what do they think really, are these disadvantaged communities? Where are the areas that have been traditionally underserved? And where do we think that there's some benefit to moving to electrification on transportation? And so what we're going to do with this particular program is we're going to create e-mobility hubs where we're going to place them in these disadvantaged communities. It's going to have, again, education on what are the options around electrification, what different modes can you take. SACOG on May 17th, so mark your calendar, is going to launch the nation's first electric bike share. We're going to have 300 bikes at that first rollout, and then a few months after that, it's going to be up to 900 electric bikes in our region. So you're going to be zipping around. It's originally just going to be in Davis, West-Sacramento, and the city of Sacramento, so it's somewhat contained, but 900 bikes in that small area. So we want to focus things like that in these e-mobility hubs in these disadvantaged communities. We want to, again, work with the TNCs like Uber and Lyft, and how can we incentivize them to not just move electric, but start to work in these disadvantaged communities as well.
Are you going to include the disadvantaged unincorporated communities?
Oh, absolutely. Yep, it's not just the cities, it's counties as well.
Stacks and ducks.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep, exactly. The picture up here right now is just an example of that. The Sacramento Housing and Redevelopment Agency, along with the Sacramento Air District, already has an EV car share program out there in a disadvantaged community. This is an example, again, of the beautiful Kia Soul EV plugged in, getting a charge ready to go. This actually is just... What's that?
I wonder whose that is.
It's not mine. Mine's out there. It's the dirtiest car in the parking lot, I noticed, too. I think I've got one more slide. So all of this obviously costs money. Guy can probably tell you I've been pushing really hard at SACOG. I've known Guy for probably 8 years. Been pushing really hard to start to get some money spent on this. And so to build this plan, I put together 3 different funding scenarios. On the low end, it was about $3.5 million. On the high end, it was close to $12 million to say, let's just pilot this. Let's just test what it's going to be. Our funding round that we're going to be launching in May of this year is actually $192 million. So you can see this is a pretty small portion of that, but I think it's a pretty big step for the first time that we want to actually test this out. So our staff recommendation is going to be to go to the board for that roughly $12 million to kind of put into these programs. I've got some dollars up here to kind of give you a sense of scale of where the money could be spent. That's not locked in. It's really, this is a competitive proposal process that we're going to work, again, through our member cities and counties, as well as our partner agencies like SMUD can actually apply for this, and the air districts. And where the money lands and where the proposals come in is more how it's going to be shaped out. I do really want to try to carve out about $2 million, again, for the fast chargers, just because there's going to be, that's really where the big push on the Volkswagen settlement is going to be in that first round of funding. Is of that $44 million, it's going to be a lot of infrastructure as well as the car share and TNC and shuttles. So we want to kind of mirror some of that's already happening in the city again, so we can push this all out. I don't have another slide, but I did want to point out that $11.7 million is really seen as a match. So SACOG has 2 things that it needs to do in order to make these dollars real, in order to actually put them out there and get projects on the street. One, we have to hit federal air quality standards. Our region has always been, right on the cusp. of ozone and particulate matter. So right now we're actually really close to being in attainment. And if we get that, then it just means that we're going to be able to continue to receive these federal dollars. If we get out of attainment, it's really hard. And we can get attainment in two ways. One, it's through behavior. So getting people just to drive less, period. Take other modes, take transit, ride their bike. It's May's Bike Month. I bike quite a bit. I can tell you, I said, get an EV. And I'm like, well, I ride my bike everywhere. I don't need one. But you know, it's that mode shift that we really need to look at. And the other is through vehicle technology. And that's why we're starting to put a lot of money in there. So that's how we hit federal air quality standards. The other thing that we need to do is hit statewide greenhouse gas emission reduction standards set by ARB. We've done that in the past few plans. So SACOG creates this long-range transportation plan. We create a land use forecast around that, and we show how people are going to get around, what mode they're going to take, where they're going to go, and we try to show or model that we're actually going to hit these greenhouse gas reduction standards. Just last month, SACOG received its goal for its next plan, which is a 19% reduction below 2005. We're really close to that. We've always been right on the cusp of really being able to hit that. Last year, it was last plan, it was 16%. We came in at about 17% reduction, which doesn't seem big, but it's pretty hard to get there. This time it's 19%, but we've got an asterisk next to it because we told ARB, we said, look, we think we can probably get there, but we're really, really going to need a lot of help. So what we're proposing to ARB is a pilot program where they give us a bunch of money to do these exact same programs that I just outlined in Green Region to blow it up even bigger. So you saw that there had 3 funding scenarios there ranging from 3 to 12 million. On the far right column was, what do we think the state's going to need to contribute? And it was like in the ballpark of $100 million. So this $12 million is really a match to ARB to say, we're going to put 12 million of our own dollars in. You give us about $100 million more, and we'll get all of these programs going. And ARB said, okay, we'll make that happen. So our greenhouse gas emission reduction target of 19 has an asterisk next to it that if they step up and give us the money and that we can fund all these pilot programs, then we'll get that 19 and probably even more. And if not, then our target's going to be lower if the state's not willing to step in.
Question,
what is the effect on your whole big, massive plan that you have if the feds actually get rid of the air quality standards?
That's kind of our
Yeah,
next talk.
yet to be seen. Yeah, but that's why California's suing.
The next presenter is a student at Sac State, and he's going to share with us some of the concerns with exactly your question. What is the conflict between what Trump is proposing, the complete elimination and moving back of those fuel economy standards, versus what California and I would argue any reasonable person would pursue? So again, let's welcome Robert Hansen.
Thank you very much. As he said, I'm a student at Sac State. I study economics and I'm a political journalism major. So this is a little tailored for this group, but it's basically based off my cost-benefit analysis report that I'm doing, again, at school. So, and as he just mentioned, yesterday, we all know that the Attorney General filed a lawsuit against the EPA over the announcement of reducing the CAF standards. As the current administration and the EPA are working towards reducing the emission standards, California has to lead the way still and lead the resistance in confronting to reduce the impact that vehicles have. We can go to the next slide. All right, this report is by the EPA. A lot of this stuff you guys might already know as concerned enthusiasts. But
here's visuals to just confirm.
So according to a recent report came out in January by the EPA, world carbon emissions for personal vehicles in 2016 were 359 grams per mile. It's a 2 mile per gram per mile decrease from 2015, and it's the lowest ever. And the fuel economy was an average of 24.7 miles per gallon, which is an increase of 1 mile per gallon. It's a tenth of an increase from the previous year, which also is a record. Also, the EPA mentioned that there were 70 models in 2017 available to consumers, where that was with a, with a range of 40 miles, or with a fuel economy of 40 miles per gallon or better, and that more than doubled since 2012. This did comprise of electric plug-in vehicles, hybrid vehicles, and all electric vehicles. Next slide. This is a report done by Indiana University, and they compared the report with a report by the Synapse Energy Economics. Synapse identified questionable inputs and methodology inconsistent from the Indiana University report. This one presents aggregate employment, and it found net positive benefits in all years, and improved. And the university had to do an improved study because they found some inaccuracies with their bias in the first one also. So all the scenarios, the vehicle standards result in national employment increases rather than decreases.
So higher fuel mileage has not hurt jobs.
Correct. Right. By 2025, more than a quarter million, or more than 100,000, and more than a quarter million by 2035 are projected. Yeah, the next one, yeah. And annual GDP also rises from it. You can go to the next one on that one too. So this is a report by the Center for Automotive Research. It generated 9 scenarios for manufacturing outcomes, and 8 out of 9 of them project manufacturing losses. The only one that it even projects an increase is at a fuel cost of $4.64 a gallon, which I don't think has even been the national average.
You might want to straight back a little bit so the people on this side can see it.
I beg your pardon. Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah. We can, yes. This is borrowed from the Blue-Green Alliance, and it shows since 2008 the investments in manufacturing from $4 billion in 2008 up to now $76 billion investments in manufacturing plants across the country. Some of this is, business as usual, but most of it, or a lot of it, shows the investment into new plants for upgraded electric vehicles and new transmissions and things like that.
Right there.
This is yeah.
Gigafactory. Yeah, cool.
Yeah. Yeah, real quick on that last slide, emissions standards, fuel savings result in over $1 trillion. Yeah, anyway, yeah. That's just basically shows the production of vehicles and or the electric vehicles, whether plug-in or battery charge, and how they're basically, once it gets promoted, and yeah, people want it, and they've just now started to actually make a dent into the overall fleet. You can go ahead.
Yeah, this is one Guy and I are studying, right? To see that impact. And so it's impressive that there's as many plug-in hybrids continuing, because we would have, the curve is showing much more electric vehicles, but there's still a big market for the plug-in hybrids.
But we'll see
It's
that
all
change
perception.
with
Yeah.
infrastructure.
Yeah.
It's perception.
Yeah. And it's, an education
And as
issue.
more cars have longer range too.
Well, and it's the last 2 presenters. Building out that infrastructure is going to change people's attitudes.
They're
It's, yeah.
afraid. I think people are afraid that
Totally.
they won't be able to get where they need to go
Totally.
if they give up gasoline.
Totally.
Especially one-car families.
So this is being highlighted just basically to show manufacturers and what their prerogatives are, whereas most companies have all cars are more than 50% of their production. GM and Ford have their majority is in trucks or SUVs or vans. Again, consumers buy what is presented to them, not necessarily what they want, and so GM and Ford obviously are still set on selling larger vehicles. Maybe they're trying to transition, but yeah. And so Subaru is the only other one that has higher, but they've got, of trucks and vehicles, have the highest fuel economy. So
Ford actually is trying to transition.
they are trying. They are trying.
Phase out all of their cars except for the Mustang and a new Fusion.
It just recently came out. Thank you. Go ahead.
Yeah.
This is sales. It shows, again, the trends up to 2016. Fourth quarter finished sales increased 19% compared to the same period. The plug-in share of the total lightweight market was 1.2% for the complete compared to 0.9% in 2016. Anyway, go ahead.
So what this graph is showing that, Robert,
Try it.
I'm going to interpret.
Yeah, please. Yeah.
That drop off, if you think about some of the recent news, the sales of the Prius are starting to tank. And that blue dropping off is dominantly Prius sales.
That's right, or
Tanking.
hybrids in general.
Yeah. But, you know, but Prius is the...
There's a the
yeah.
Prius Prime, which is a plug-in hybrid,
Yeah, but
is
that-
climbing.
Yeah, but that's in the
Yeah.
purple. But the drop-off is because, you know, and again,
Mostly-
Toyota is reporting concerns about Prius sales.
Yeah.
So much. Yeah. Did I throw this one in? Okay.
So yeah, this is cool, the
Yeah.
cost of batteries.
Yeah. According to the Union of Concerned Scientists, today's battery packs are cost manufacturers 1.5 to 2.5 times that of manufacturing similarly sized gasoline vehicles. However, the costs will significantly decline as the volume of battery production increases and manufacturers learn from prior vehicle and battery designs.
Tesla's way below that now.
Tesla, but they're outlier. They're an outlier. Yeah.
Estimates that they're in the 170 range. So.
But that's where those blue dots are for 16 and 18.
Yeah,
But
they're-
they've also reported those numbers like 149, 169 for Volt.
Yeah, and the Bolt actually concluded that its battery pack currently costs $12,500 per vehicle to produce. If the battery pack cost reductions,
So that's around 200 then.
yeah. By 2025, that should fall to about 8,000, about 12% reduction. But that's again for not for another 7 or 8 years. Research and development should reduce costs significantly. Yet increasing scale of EV production may be more important to lowering the price. To achieve battery cost reduction goals, it's estimated that global electric vehicle sales would need to reach about 4 million vehicles a year. In 2016, 750,000 EVs sold worldwide, with the U.S. sales at about 160,000, accounting for 20%. The U.S. would need to sell about 800,000 EVs annually to reach the 4 million to help lower those costs.
The one question, or sort of observation in there, Robert, is
Yeah.
we don't have, I suspect it's hard to get recent sales numbers out of China.
Oh.
But that's where the big market is right now. And it's really being aggressively driven by government policy.
There
More
is.
than twice the U.S.
Yeah.
That's the major market that they're focusing on. Yeah. Then some of those initial numbers aren't too hard to get. They know that China's way outpacing them as far as infrastructure and.
So that's driving these prices even harder in
Yeah.
a downward direction.
So this is the densest concentration of plug-in stations in Sacramento area, downtown. Basically, I'm highlighting, this and the next slide are highlighting the what I think are concerns for infrastructure. So you can go to the next one. On the right here is the Citrus Heights, Ranch Cordova area. Where generally, that's kind of how the county generally looks. These are with private and public stations. This area is Elk Grove and right down 99. Also, not coincidentally, one of the most economically disadvantaged communities right here. The city and officials and county officials probably need to do more to help focus on these areas in town to help, again, keep low-income earners in the loop with electric vehicles. I mean, they do have to charge at home, sure, but I think, like he said in his report earlier, at home helping with funding, getting home chargers installed and things like that, or whatever that entails. I'm not an owner, so yeah. Go ahead. This is the impact that tax credits have on electric vehicles. Price after federal incentive on the Focus, it's about 23 for plug-in and 24 for the forward focus titanium with regular gasoline and so on and so forth.
So more incentive.
Sales suffer, yeah, in the absence of tax credits like this. Georgia offered a tax credit of $5,000. As soon as it was gone, it plummeted. The sales plummeted. That was from 2014 to 2015. Electric vehicles market in the United States is there's a major drawback without the federal tax credit. Or no, there is a major drawback. Legislation comes with 200,000 electric vehicle cap per manufacturer, and some automakers are likely to hit that cap this year. And at that point, the size of the incentive scales down for any electric vehicle sold by manufacturer. Again, decreasing the likelihood of, or the advancement of electric vehicles. Yeah, exactly. So
See, this is our function.
yes, so this is basically, it's like our basic conclusion. It's education the public needs to be educated on the differences between owning and buying an electric vehicle versus a traditional gasoline vehicle. Going about buying it, going about what entails maintaining it. None of these this is not general knowledge by most people, so they just go about their business and they don't know how to negotiate or know what to look for when they're buying an electric car. They do have lower maintenance costs, but you guys know that anyway. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna call it here so that we can go and check out the two-wheeled vehicles in the back room.
So my electric KTM Freeride E. Very excited to be one of the few people that got these in the United States in sort of an introductory program last year, and really excited because the electric motorcycle presents new opportunities in my mind, maybe some more urban riding space, and just a different experience. It's really unique to be out there on the trail, to be able to hear what the bike is doing on the trail and not have it drowned out by the engine noise. We tend to ride a lot more by feel and sound now, I guess, and I've been having a lot of fun. This particular bike, a little more of a playful chassis than like my off-road ICE engine motorcycle that I have, which is a little larger, slightly heavier, and so this is a lot more forgiving, easier to just jump on and ride. It's a one-speed transmission, so you don't have to worry about a clutch, any of that. So they're really user-friendly and a great way for people to get introduced to off-road motorcycle riding. What is it, 22 horsepower at the rear wheel, but I believe it's like 42 pound-feet of torque, which is quite impressive for such a small little motorcycle.
Could you turn it on?
Oh yeah, it takes a second here. Three-step, turn the key on. This will power it up here in a second. You can see the battery's at, what's that, 60% right now? 80% I think from my last ride. That's actually 80%.
And how do you charge this bike?
It's got a 220 separate charging system, so like a dryer plug will work, and the charger plugs right into here. Takes an hour and a half from 0 to full. It's a 2.6 kilowatt hour battery. Gets, depending on riding conditions, anywhere from 12 to 18 miles, which can be 20 minutes to an hour and a half or better, depending on how I ride it.
Well, thank you so very much for giving us this short tour.
You're welcome.
Hi, I'm Bob with SacEV, and this is my commuter bike called the Super Commuter. It's an EcoSpeed, now it's the Nomad. It's a kit that you purchase and you build the bike up. It's got 2 battery packs. This has got a 17 amp hour battery, and it's got a 23 amp hour battery. So it's about 40 amp hours total. It'll go about a range of about 150 miles on a single charge. It uses a stationator to charge it. This is set up to charge any battery. Nickel metal, lithium, lead acid, and you can program up to 18 different 18 different charge sessions. This bike has a 7-speed internal hub, single speed up front, and disc brakes, or drum brakes instead of the disc brakes. So pretty much it's pretty easy to ride. You ride it like a normal bicycle. So you turn it on, turn the battery on. You can come over and look at the cyclometer. This is a cyclist analyst, 49.9 volts. It's a 48 volt system, and it's got miles per hour, amp hours left, or amp hours used, and then miles gone, and then watts. So I'll turn it on, turn the controller on, and then you can ride it without pedaling, or you can ride it with pedaling. And then you can shift it on the fly or when you stop. That's just so nice, that internal hub. You can just come to a stop, put it into low gear. It'll do about comfortably 22 miles an hour. With the tailwind, I've gotten it up to 30 miles an hour. But with a conversion like this, you can make it go faster. But if it's a regulatory, if it's off the shelf bike, they're rated to 15 miles an hour. But because this is considered off the road bike, it can go faster. Yeah.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bob with Nissan Technical Center. What we've got is a Leaf battery. This is a module, single cell, built up and made into a module. This is an inverter for the Leaf, 2012 Leaf. It's a demonstrator. It sits just above and on top of the motor. These pretty much are all the running gear of a Nissan Leaf. And down here is the motor with a reduction drive gear stuck to it. And that's it.